We begin the current Daf, Mesech is Yevamos Daf Tes. We begin on the bottom of Lamed Ches Beis, second line up from the bottom of Yamin, where the Gemara continues the discussion from the previous Daf at the third approach in explaining the discrepancy in the opinion of Shammai, why in the Reisha he does not disagree with Brazil, in the Sefer he does, as we're going to explain. It should correspond to Kasich and the Cheskel to anytime Daf. I'm joining with today's Daf. So this is going to discuss in today's Daf on the order of Yerusha of a woman's property. Her husband is really the primary. She has no husband, her children. She has no children, her father, or her father's Yerushim, which has been called Yerushim Habal or Yerushim Ha'ab. Zikas Nesua is a suffix Nesua. Zikas Arusa is a suffix Arusa. That the bond that a woman who's falling from the Nesuin, that makes it like a suffix Nesuin. And if she was only engaged to her husband who passed away, that Zika makes a suffix Arusa. Ain't suffix Mesim Nevada, that whoever is the Muhsik, the one who is definitive, the subject cannot come to exclude. So in the previous step, we had a question. In the case of the ratio, we said that Shemeres Yav, a woman that's alive, she's waiting for Yibum, and she inherits assets, her father passed away. We said Bisham and Missal both agree that Shemecheres, in the sense become, she can sell, she can give its valid meaning to say that she's the Muhzik, and yet for some reason, Mesa, when she passes away, we said, but Shammai said you divide the Yershe Ab with the Yershe Habal. And Basil said, no, the question is, why is in the Reisha, Beishamai does not disagree with Basil and hold, yes, she's the Muksik. Why in the Sefer is she suddenly not the Muksik anymore? Why do we say the Yershe Ha'ab don't get everything the way Basil says, and rather Yershe Ha'ab get to divide it? That was the $1 million question that we asked in the previous Daf, which we had two approaches, and the Gemara continues now with two more approaches on today's Daf to answer that question. Says the Gemara, this is the second line up in the bottom of the Yaman of Lamed Ches Beis. This is going on, like we mentioned in the beginning of this sugya. It's not really continuing the previous lines of the Gemara, but to answer again, like we said, what's the difference in the ratio? The Shammai don't disagree, and what's the difference in the when they do disagree? Meaning, and the answer is not because in the ratio she was alive, and the Sefer she wasn't alive, which was the way Rabbah had answered on the previous top, because most definitely the Sefer is talking about also that if she had acquired these assets when she was Shmeres Yavam, Shammai would agree that yes, like Beis Hill, that the Yerushei Ha'ab would be definite, and the Chassan would be B'cheskas, and Shammai would agree that no, the Yerushei Ha'ab would not get it, only Yerushei Ha'ab would get it. So then how do we understand this? Abayam says like this. Reisha, the case the Reisha is talking about, the Naflo Kishi Shmeres Yavam. When did these assets fall to her? When she was already widowed from her first husband, waiting for the Yavam. Oh, so therefore she could initially sell it and give it according to Beis Shammai. And the same thing would be if she died too. Her Yarshim would inherit her, because it doesn't help the Zika to acquire assets right now. But Seif is talking about the Nafla Kishitaft of the Baal. When did she inherit this from her father? Was when she was married to her first husband. At that point in time, she had inherited from her father. So therefore what? So the Gemara continues to talk about Testament and explains. Ksavra Abaya holds, meaning we see from the fact that Abaya explains the Machlekes Beis Shammai and Beis Hill that when it's falling for her when she was still married to her first husband, and even so, Beis Hill holds Nechasim B'cheskasan, still the woman's inheritors will get it. So obviously Abaya holds that when a woman is married, Yodoi Keyoda, not more, meaning the husband's hand, his rights, is just as much as her rights. Meaning, because obviously when the woman is married, her husband has rights to her assets, but it's still her assets. So it's saying he obviously holds that they're the equivalent. And therefore, when the husband dies, the Yavim who only has Zika, obviously he's less than the woman now. Because he's not as strong as the husband, because the husband at least was married to her. Here the Yavim only has Zika. So you go down a notch. Oh, so if when they were married it was Yoda Kiyada, now the husband died and you only have a Yavam, okay, you'll go one step lower and she's going to have a stronger hand over here. Oh, so Nechasim B'cheskasa, so therefore Beis Hill says, her inheritors get it all. Beis Shammai, however, disagree, and they say, no, a married woman, Yadoi Adif Meyada. His rights are stronger than her rights. So therefore, when he dies, it goes down a notch. And now the Zika of the Yavam is at least Kiyada, is equivalent, is equal, and therefore it's going to be Echleiku. And so to Rashi brings that in the Gemara Ksubas that Pei Gimel Menaf. Also we have Machlekes Abaye and Rava, which we're going to quote right now Rava, that Abaye says when a woman is married, it's Yodoi Kiyada, they're equal. Rabbi says, no, Yoda Adifa Miyada, he's stronger, which the Gemara says, what's enough? It's this case that we're discussing here in our Masechet of Shemeres Yavam, regarding when she inherits it, when she's still married to him. So then it was either Yadai Ki Yada, and then it goes down a notch, like Abaye is saying, to make it as less than, and therefore Beis Hillel holds the Chazim Echazkasan, but Beis Shammai held that no, Yodei Adifa Miyada, and therefore Beis Shammai holds, in the case of the Sefer, that they're going to split. However, Rava disagrees with Abaye. He says, if she would inherit from, let's say, her father who passed away, when she was still married to her first husband, no one's going to disagree, even Beis Hillel, the Yodei Adifa Miyada, that his hand is stronger than her hand, and therefore the Yorshe Habal, says Rashi, would actually take the Nechasim. Not the way Abaye is explaining, that then that's what Beis Hillel holds the other way around. Nechasim Echazkasim, it's not true, because his hand is stronger than her hand, meaning at least if she was married, Beis Hillel would agree that you would split it, let's say, because it would be Yodah Ki Yodah, but no, it's not true. If they were married, he would get it all. Now, rather, a fourth interpretation, says Rava, to explain this contradiction seemingly of Beis Shammai in our Mishnah. It says, no, both the Reisha and the Seif of our Mishnah are talking about where she inherited it when she was a Shemeres Yavam, not when she was married. Again, because if it was when she was married, says Rava Naligabaya, Yodai Adifa Miyada, and no, her Yorsha will not get anything. But rather, Reisha of our Mishnah, that Beis Shammai does not disagree, where the Yavam had not done a Maimer with the Shemeres Yavam before she inherited these Nechasim. So there, the Zika itself is not effective to acquire Nechasim at all. Like any woman before she's engaged, it's hers, and therefore the Yavam has no rights in it. And therefore Beis Shammai would agree Mecheres in the sentence V'kayik. But Seif is talking about the Avad B'Maimer, where the Yavam did a Maimer, and as Rashi points out, Beis Shammai is going l'shitasai that they say Daf Chavtes Med Aleph, Maimer is kinda, as Beis Shammai say, if a Yavam did a Maimer, and even if, let's say, the Chayse Kuka falls, he says, no, Ishta Imai, because Beis Shammai holds that a Maimer is like a full-fledged kinyan. Whereas Beis Hillel go, according to their opinion, they hold that it's not going to be kinyan. And the Gemara explains a little bit more specific in what Rav is trying to say in Beis Shammai. Because Rav holds, because this was contested, we had this on the previous Daf, it wasn't clear when Maimer, according to Beis Shammai, that it's a kinyan, what exactly, to what extent is it? So on that, because Rav holds that this kinyan of Maimer, Beis Shammai, it does like this. It makes the woman into Vade Arusa, like a definitive engaged woman, V'safak Nesua, and to like a doubtful married woman. So what does that mean? In other words, that even though according to Beis Shammai, Vadai Arusam, that we make her like she's definitively engaged, which is Litches B'tzara, to reject the rival, her sister, that's falling from the other brother. If you recall, when we originally quoted this opinion of Beis Shammai earlier in our Masechta, because of Aches Isha, when she falls from a different brother after the Maimer, the first one, Beis Shammai had said, no, you did Maimer, Ishta Imoy, you're like married to her already, even though it's just a Maimer. So in regard to that, it's like a Vade Arusa, like you're already definitively engaged to the sister, but it's not like a definitive married woman to acquire for the Yavam the whole inheritance of the woman. Rather, it's V'safik Nesua. We consider her like a doubtful married woman. What does it mean doubtful? Lachlik b'nechasim, to divide the assets, because it's like not sure, okay, 50-50. Whereas Beis Hillel go according to their opinion, the whole Maimer is not kind of anything, and there's going to be nechasim and therefore that's why the Yorshe Ha'av are going to get it, whereas Beis Shammai holds that it's going to be divided between the Yorshe Habal and the Yorshe Ha'av. So that was 4 different interpretations, how to explain this discrepancy of Beis Shammai in our Mishnah. So Itmar Mishmei did a Belazar. In the name of Belazar was taught Kabasei did Rava. He said like Rava, which was this last interpretation we just said, that he makes the discrepancy if a Maimer was done or not. Whereas they said in the name of Rabbi Chanina, by the way, Abaye said that the difference is when did she inherit it? Was it when she was still with the first husband, or when she was a Shemeres Yavam? But the Gemara has a difficulty with this. Did Rabbi Lazar really say like Rava? But Rabbi Lazar is quoted as saying, Maimer Beis Shammai, he said this, and we quoted this of Chotes and Aleph, but according to Beis Shammai, what is Maimer? In the kain, although Beis Shammai says your kain is it's only to reject v'tzara, but not even to divide it at all. If you're saying like Rava is holding that the maimer is creating a kinyan that you'll be able to divide. But Rabbi Lazar can't be like Rava because he says that it's only there to reject the tzava. So the Gemara says, right, Epoch, you have to switch it around. Really is Rabbi Lazar who's like Abaya, and the other mandam that we quoted, Rabbi Yosef ben Chanina, he's going to be like Rava. That's one interpretation. No, if you want to say, no, don't switch it around. And Rabbi Lazar would tell you, Kiyamri, now when did I say? In other words, I told you that the only thing Maimer is going to do is going to reject the tzara. All they meant to say was, do lo beget. It means if you did a Maimer, it's not enough now that this Yevama that you did a Maimer that you would just want to release with a get. No, it's not like you're fully married. It means to say, but it's just enough to push away the tzara. But of course, you would still have to do chalitza if you didn't want to go ahead and consummate the relationship with this Yevama. But regarding dividing the estate to not acquire, Miyami, did I say that you're not going to acquire? I never said that. I don't mean Maimer is limited that only does this. I meant in the context of not being enough to get. But of course, regarding acquiring assets to divide the estate, I could agree. And would it not be a contradiction that Rabbi would be like Rabbi? Now the Gemara concludes this sugya that Amar Papa says, a precise reading of our Mishnah indicates like Abaya because the Seifa spoke about that that it seems to indicate like Abaya that she inherited these assets when she was still with her first husband, which was only Abaya who said that variable, and therefore that's why it's not totally for the woman like Beishamai, because they hold Yodeh Adifa mi Yodah, and therefore when there's at least a Zikr Yom that goes down a Nash, it becomes Yodeh Ki Yodah, which they're the equal. But the Avagav the Kasha Mason, although at least the concept of her dying, that is difficult, as the Gemara is going to explain. So the Gemara says, the Tani, within the Mishnah, when we spoke about the Machlekes B'Sham Yisrael, we spoke about the words were, what do we do with the Nechasim and Nechnasim B'Yetzimim? Now, my Nechnasim u'may Yetzim, what do we mean with the properties that come in and go out? Love, isn't it talking about Nechnas L'Rishus Abal, that it came into her, with her to the domain of the husband, the Yetzim L'Rishus Abal, and it leaves from the domain of the husband, L'Rishus Ab, to the domain of the father, when they die. Meaning, obviously, we're talking about that it was she had it when her husband was alive, because it came into her when she was by the husband, and then it leaves from the husband when he dies. So you see clearly that the wording seems to indicate, like Abaya, that the case is talking about specifically in the Seifa that she's inheriting when her first husband is still alive, which again was only a significant variable according to Abaya. According to other interpretations, either if you made a Maimer or not, it was dependent on different things. Now, but Vavgav Dekasha Mason, although the fact that we're talking about that she's dead in the case of the Seifa, which is really like the way Rabbis had asked the question on Ula on the previous Daf, that's difficult. Because at the Mifli Gufa, instead of disagreeing about the actual property itself, Ula Chamisa, and what to do with it after she's dead, which was the Machlekes B'Sham Yisrael, is it Yachlik Yosher Bal Mishar Ab or Nachas Machas Kasan, Lif L'Gu B'Chayel, a pair's wife, to talk about when she's dead. You could talk about when she's even alive regarding the utility. Because since, according to Abai, the reasoning is because of Yada Ki Yada, of the Yavam, which according to Bishami, that's why you do Yachleiku. So then you could talk about even when she's alive. And the Shaila is, does the Yavam get to use it? According to Beisil, no. According to Beishamai, yes, at least 50%. And Besulay Midi. And there's nothing more to talk about. And most definitely, the precise reading of the Mishnah seems to indicate like Abaya, but it is difficult. Why did you have to talk about that she's dead? You could have had the same machlekes even when she's alive, and no one said over here it's better dead than alive. It could have been the same type of a case, and that's the question. But it definitely sounds like from a Mishnah that it's like Abaya's interpretation, which was from these four interpretations, to understand why Bisham is disagreeing in the Seif and not making her muhsig. Yet in the Reisha, he did hold that she's muhsig. Those are the four interpretations of what's the significance of the difference of these cases. So we continue with the halacha of the Mishnah that we said Knasa. This is all talking about regarding when she's a Shemer's Yavam. Now, when she gets married to the Yavam, then she's like his wife for all halachas, and it's no more like this, Suffolk Arusa, Suffolk Nesua. She's a full-fledged wife. So what halacha are we trying to say that, of course, he did Yibum to her? So Rabbi Yisrael means there is a chiddush. Because else you'd say no chiddush. Of course she's like his wife all halachas. Now it's limits to say shemagash beget. That if let's say he wants to release her, doesn't need chalitza anymore, which generally when you want to release the Yevami you have to chalitza. No. You could just do a divorce already get. And umavzira. And if he wants to, he could remarry her and she's not forbidden to him. So the Gemara asks on both of these halachas. Magash beget. That you could divorce her or get. That's also that's obvious. What do you mean she becomes your wife? No, so good that when you would have thought to say since the pasuk says that he should take her as a wife and do yibum to her, so it would sound like that even though he already did lekuchen, but you're still calling her yibum. See, after the word lekacha, she's still yibum. So Amrachman Torah is saying by that yibum maybe shouldn't allow. Still the original yibum from the first husband is still on her. So therefore, b'chalitza beget light. If you want to release her, you got to do a chalitza. It's not enough for to get. Mashallah, and that's what we're saying. That no, she's a full-fledged wife. That's what we're learning out. That we're saying kanasa arehi kishtu l'chol. Says Gemara, okay, but machzira pshit, the other half of the halacha that he could remarry her. Of course, obviously, or like a regular wife, you could divorce a wife and remarry her. It's just if she married someone else in between, that would be a problem. But if not, what's the chiddush by Yevama? It's like, well, no. So I mean, you would have thought to say mitzvah dam yirachman allow avdo. The mitzvah the Torah imposed upon him, he already did yibum. He already had a ma'isa be with her. Now that he divorced her, how should take him lebe iser shazach? Now you're back to the old Isser of Eshach, of the brother's wife. The only reason why you allowed to do is because the mitzvah, you already did the mitzvah. Kamash that no, and once we say it's mutter, it's like a wife of all halachas. Now, it says and it's asking on both parts. Maybe taka. Maybe taka, you cannot just divorce her again. Maybe taka, once you didn't divorce, you cannot remarry her because my says Isser Eshach, you already did the mitzvah. So my no, that's the pasuk says, and it could have just said v'yibma. Why do you have to write l'kacha le'isha? So that's what you learn from the word le'isha, kibush l'kacha. Once he does l'kuchen, that he takes her, she's like his wife, all halachas, so what actually do with v'yibma? Doesn't v'yibma, I thought, as the Gemara was asking, doesn't v'yibma tell me that she still has halacha v'yavama even after the l'kuchen? No. V'yibma is teaching me either, according to Rebbe, as we learned in the first parak of Chesed and Aleph, if you remember that whole sugya where they were busy with Aleha and we're using B'yibma according to Rebbe, that's where he learns out to forbid the tzavas and the rayas. Or Kondrabana, B'yibma teaches you that you do Balkarcha, you could even do it forcibly, but it doesn't teach you Adayin Yibum Merishna Aleha because once you marry, there's no more Yevama and she's like a regular wife for all halachas. Now the Mishnah said, Ubavad, as long as she takes Ksubas B'chulu, as long as her Ksuba is only on the estate of the first husband, not on the second husband. Which takes discussing what it really gained, because anyways, if the first husband doesn't have, you're going to go back on the second husband. But be that as it may, it's not on the young. She could only collect her ksuba from the first husband. Says in my time, what's the reason? So the Gemara says it's far. Because Isha Hiknulai, this woman was acquired to the Yavam to do Yibum Minashamayim from heaven. He never made his property as collateral for a ksuba, so he could sell it whenever he wants to. Because he didn't want to marry this woman. Hashem is making him marry this woman. Now, however, he less love in the Rishon, but if let's say she doesn't have anywhere to collect from the first husband, the one who passed away because he died a poor man, so Tikinu Lo Mesheni, then the rabbis instituted from the second one, from the Yavam, so that it shouldn't be light in his eyes to release her, which that was the whole fundamental principle of the Ksuba, that he doesn't want to just divorce her because it's going to cost him a pretty penny. So we want it from the Yavam too. So if the first one doesn't have, then they instituted that she could even collect from the second husband. Now we continue with the next Mishnah, continuing on qualifying the mitzvah of Yibum. Says the Mishnah, mitzvah b'gad v'liyam. The mitzvah is for the older brother to do Yibum, which we learned this out already in the Chavdal Min Aleph from Bahaya B'cher, which although the simple translation of the pasuk sounds like the firstborn child of the Yavam and the Yevama, but it really means Bahaya B'cher, if the firstborn of the brothers, he's the one that does the mitzvah of Yibum. Now, Lei Ratza, which we're going to explain exactly what it is if he doesn't want to, but if he doesn't want to, Mahalchan Kalach, and then you go to the other brothers. Lei Ratza, if let's say none of the brothers want to do Yibum, so then go back to the older brother and they tell him like this. Alecha mitzvah, the mitzvah is on you. Either do chalitza or do yibum. Now, if let's say talabakam, let's say he suspends it for a minor, meaning literally a young boy. Let's say he has a 5-year-old brother. He says, look, wait for him at Shiagla. I'm not interested. I'm already, I'm over the hill. Yeah, I have a 5-year-old brother. Wait, actually, when he becomes an adult, he'll do yibum. Let's say begadol. Let's say he's saying there's an older brother at Yevamos that's overseas, meaning the oldest brother went overseas. Now there's a brother over here who's the older of the brothers who are here, he's saying, look, the oldest brother is not here. Wait till he comes back. He's older than me. Maybe he's going to do yibum to you. Or let's say he has another brother that's a cheresh or shaitor, that's a deaf, mute, or mentally deranged. So he's saying, wait, maybe he's going to get healed. Now, ain't shamala, we don't listen to this brother. We tell him, look, the mitzvah is on you. Because although you have a brother, let's say, overseas that's older than you, but since you're the oldest brother that's in front of us, the mitzvah is on you, and we don't delay mitzvahs, as the Gemara is going to explain. So, either do chalitza, yibam, enough, you're the one who has to do it. Now, related to the halacha of the Mishnah, we have the following machlekes. Idmar, we learned. B is cotton, b'chalitza is god. Let's say the oldest brother is willing to do chalitza, but a younger brother is willing to do yibam. Now, as Rashi points out, when we say cotton over here, in contrast when we spoke about in the Mishnah, it's not talking about a real cotton like a minor under bar mitzvah, because a cotton cannot do yibam chalitza, because as the Gemara tells us on the Samach Alf from the base, Shemiyim Tzisris. He might turn out to be a eunuch. He might not be able to have children. We don't know because he's too young. And Rashi points out, even according to one who's not concerned for a mute, because most people are able to have children, and a cotton could do yibam. Here in the sugi, it's obvious that we're not talking about a literal cotton, because the Gemara later on is going to ask if, let's say, when he's told about cotton at sheyagdim, the Gemara says shrim mitzalisha mashinan, we don't delay. Obviously, that by a literal cotton, everyone agrees. So there wouldn't be the machlekes that we're having over here, because here we're going to have a machlekes regarding who comes first, the bias of the cotton or the chalitza of the gadol. If we're talking about a real cotton, you would have to wait. And everyone agrees you don't wait. So we're not talking about a real cotton. We just mean a younger brother, he's 37. You have an older brother who is 42. Right? So the older one is willing to do it, but I'm only doing chalitza. The younger one's willing to do it, and he'll do even bia. He'll do yibam, but he's younger. So please about Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg, machlekes. Chadama one says that bia's cotton adifa. We'd rather prefer the younger one to do bia. The other one says, no, chalitza is good adifa. The chalitza, the older one, is better, as the Gemara explains. Mandam is cotton adifa. The one who says that the bia, the young one, is better. No, mitzvah yibum. We prefer, of course, we want to have this neshama that he doesn't have anyone to take over. He has no yarshim. We want to have this continue with the brother. So let a younger brother do it. Mandam chalitza is good adifa. The one who says, no, the chalitza, the older one, is better, because the makom gadol in place of the older brother, bia is cotton av klumi. The bia, the younger one, is insignificant because we know the mitzvah is on the older one. The mitzvah is on the older one. Now you get a choice. You could either say yes or no, but we'd rather have the chalitza of the older one than the bia of the younger one. So the Gemara, however, asks from our Mishnah, the Mishnah that says loy ratza. The words of the Mishnah are that if, let's say, the older one doesn't want to, you say okay, and then you go to all the other brothers. Now it says my love, isn't it what it means? Loy ratza liyab. What do you mean the older one doesn't want to? He didn't want to do yibam. I'll do chalitza. And the Ketanian, so what does the Mishnah say? Ooh, you don't want to do yibam. So they go to all the brothers that, what? Why going to all the brothers? Maybe they can do yibam. Aha! Shema Mino, what you see from that is, B is cotton adifa, because that's why you're going to the other ones. Says he no, that's not what it means. Loy rotza meant, loy rotza lachletz v'liyam. I'm not interested. I don't want chalitza. I don't want yibam. I'm too busy. I have my company to run. I'm not interested. So, and that's there. So they go to the other brothers. Say, look, this guy's not interested. He's not working with us. You know, then they go to the other brothers. But you're right. If he wanted to do chalitza, we'd do with him. The problem is, says the Gemara, wait a second. The kaposik abach, and then you have to translate the same words by the brothers too. When it says that the Mishnah continued and says, oh, if let's say loy rotzu, the other brothers also don't want to, and then they'll go back to the older brother and say, okay, look, they also don't want it. So we'll come back to you. What does it mean they didn't want it? It means loy lachatz v'loy liyabim. They didn't want to do not chalitza, not yibum. Then the question is, amay chalitza mitzvah gadol. Then why are you going back to the oldest brother? Meaning, like Rashi explains the Gemara's question. If you say that whenever it says loy ratza and loy ratzu of the Mishnah, it just means they don't want to do yibum, I understand why you're going back to the older brother. Because since they all want to do chalitza, and he also wants to do chalitza, he's first because he's the oldest. But if you say that he doesn't even want to do chalitza, so why going back to the older brother? Obviously, you would say you're going back to the older brother, l'mechafi, to force him to do chalitza. But if that's the case, l'chafi to do, then force them to do chalitza. Why are you making Bezdin crazy that they already went to the oldest? He's going to the big rabbanim with the long white beards and knocking on his office door, and they say, look, I'm not interested, I'm too busy. You make him go to the younger brothers, knocking on door to door. They're followed by the youngest brother, and he says, no, I'm not interested. You make him go back to older brother, for what? To force for chalitza? Let force the younger brother also to do chalitza. Why are you making, for Yibam I understand mitzvah gadol Yibam, but why are you forcing it for chalitza? Says Yimon, no, it's not difficult. Even the mitzvah led the date. I mean, since the mitzvah is primarily on the oldest brother, the date we force him, and yes, to do chalitza. So it doesn't contradict the man the Amar who says that if the chalitza of gadol, there would be adifa, because to the contrary, actually, that's why going back for him to do chalitza. But if he was willing to do chalitza, yes, he would do that before the yibum of the younger brothers, because when he was leiratza, he didn't want to do nothing. He didn't want to do not yibum and not chalitza. But actually, now the Gemara asked on the other mandama. We said, according to the other mandama, the B is cut not difa. The question is, now we learned the Mishnah, Tolu cut not sheyagim. If let's say he's the one, you ask one of the brothers, an older brother, and he says, you know what, do me a favor, I have a younger brother. Wait till he becomes older. He becomes a gadol, he'll do yibum. So he said in the Mishnah, ain't shamel, you don't listen to him. Says the Gemara, bibas cut not difa. But if the older brother is willing to do chalitza, the younger brother, he has a 10-year-old brother. You're telling me the bia of a cotton, not a real cotton, but when he will become older, but a younger brother is better. So then, why don't you listen to the older brother? Ninta, you should wait till that boy becomes the mitzvah. He might become an adult, and he might do yibum, and you like the yibum of the younger brother better than the chalitza of the older brother. Says the Gemara, wait a second. According to your reason, I could ask you the same question on another halacha of the Mishnah. Mishnah said, let's say the older brother trying to get out of it because with gadol, Yevamos Daf says, look, I know I'm the oldest brother here, but we have a brother who lives overseas. He's even older than me. He's the bachar. Wait till he comes back from overseas, and maybe he'll do yibum. So we said in the Mishnah, ain't shamel, we don't listen to him. What am I? Why? Why don't you listen to him? Maybe that brother will come and do chalitza because, according to you, you held chalitza's gadol as adifa, which even chalitza is even better. So, meaning as long as the oldest. So why don't you listen? Same way you tell me wait till the minor gets bar mitzvah that he'll do yibum. Then why did you wait till the oldest brother comes back from an Indian if he might do chalitza because your chalitza's gadol adifa? So I could ask the same question on you too. Ella, rather, obviously, which answers both ways, and therefore it's not difficult. Because shiur mitzvah limashing. We don't delay a mitzvah. We're not going to push over a mitzvah. Even if we'll hold B's cut nadifa, even though the younger brother do yibum is better, but we're not going to wait for that, and therefore that's not a raya for to any one of them. Now, the Gemara continues on with Beis and says another version. Is the army that those who say that actually the bia kolem lepli. When it comes to bia, no one's going to disagree. The bia is cut natif. Of course, the bia of a younger brother is better because that's the whole purpose of yibum. We want to have this neshama continue with the brother, and then the child is coming. That's the neshama. Of course, we'd rather do this. So if it's not going to be the older brother, yeah, we're going to want the younger brother. Kipligi, the whole machlekes was, but chalitza is cut regarding the chalitza of a younger brother. V'achidman, this is how we learn. Chalitza is called chalitza gadol. The machlekes was if you have an older brother willing to do chalitza and a younger brother willing to do chalitza. What's the machlekes? Chadam one says chalitza gadol difa. Chalitza older brother is better because the older brother is the primary one. We'd rather have him do chalitza. The other one says no kedadin. They're the same thing. For yibum, the older brother is better, but for chalitza, they're all the same. So the Gemara explains. The one who says the chalitza, the older brother is better than mitzvah gadol, because like we said, mitzvah with the oldest brother. Bidach, the other one would say, no, kiyamin mitzvah gadol. When do we say mitzvah with the oldest? When yibum. That's what the pasuk is talking about. They're the same thing. But the problem is on this last month, the Gemara says, we learned in our Mishnah, it says, loy ratzu. We said if the other brothers also don't want to, it doesn't say what they don't want to, it says they don't want to. Then you go back to the oldest brother. It says, my lab, isn't it saying loy ratzu liyab, which that's the passion. Why wouldn't someone do chalitza? They don't want to do yibum. Elalachutz, but they'll do chalitza. And the Ritani, and still the Mishnah tells us, we go back to the oldest brother. Obviously you see from there, chalitza gadol difa. See, chalitza the older brother is better, and they're not equivalent. They want to know lie. No, what does mean they don't want to? It meant I'm not interested. I never liked the system anyway. I don't want to do no chalitza, no yibum. So then that's when they're going to go back to the oldest. Says the Gemara, if that's the case, the kavasik of a gadol. So that must mean the first half of that case, when the oldest brother, when it says leilatza, he doesn't want to, meant leilatza leilatza. The older brother, when you went to him first, he said, I don't want to. What doesn't he want to do? He doesn't want to do not yibum not chalitza, because that's what leilatza is. So leilatza would also mean that. But after that's the case, he didn't want to do anything either. It's a similar question like we had in Naman Aleph. Why are you going back to older brother then? To force him? Because someone's got to do something. Let to do it. So then when you have the youngest brother, force him. Why go back to the oldest? So no, keeping the mitzvah led to since the mitzvah primarily is on the oldest brother, we force him, which again, because maybe he might be miyabim, And therefore it's better to go back to the oldest brother, but you're right, essentially the chalitza of a younger brother is just as equal as that of the older brother. But Tashma, the Gemara asks now on the other mandama. Tala begadol, we said if let's say the oldest brother who's here, he's suspending it on the older brother than him, that's Ashim until he comes like from overseas. We said in the Mishnah, we don't listen to it. Says the Gemara, if you would think to say that the chalitza of the older brother is better, why Taki don't you listen to this brother? Says Ninter, you should wait the Masmach might come and do chalitza. Says Gemara, no. I could ask on one of the other cases. According to your reasoning, when it said in the Mishnah that you, if let's say he says, look, I have a 10-year-old brother, wait till he becomes older. Ain't Shalom, we don't listen to him. Why? Ninter dimagodlu miyabim. Wait, and maybe he might become older, might do yibum, which according to everyone in this second version, everyone holds that bias katan is adifa than chalitza gadol, or inami, which from the case that we asked, maybe asa ihu mayama, maybe the older brother might come and also do yibum, which according to everyone is better. Forget about chalitza. Why asking only that you're saying according to one that holds gadol chalitza gadol adifa? Oh, wait till the older brother comes. I could ask the same question on you, even though you hold chalitza, both of them is the same. But you should wait. Maybe the older brother might come and actually do yibum, which it would be difficult according to you too, because you hold even yibum cotton as adifa. So rather, like the Gemara answered Aman Alf in the first version, so too by the second version, kol shiur mitzvah shehina. We don't delay any mitzvahs. So even if one would be preferable, we wouldn't delay because that wouldn't be a question on any one of the madam. So now the Gemara continues with the preference of yibum over chalitza. It's not possible. Another in the Mishnah Masechet is b'chayros. Mitzvah's yibum condemns the mitzvah chalitza. The mitzvah of yibum comes before doing chalitza. But that was only, says the Mishnah B'Rishayna in the beginning of Miskal L'Shem Mitzvah, where they had in mind because they're doing the mitzvah, L'Shem mitzvah's yibum, to go ahead and perform the mitzvah of the Torah. But Achshav Shem Miskal L'Shem Mitzvah, but now that their intent is not for a mitzvah purpose, so in Amr they said mitzvah's chalitza condemns the mitzvah yibum. We actually prefer. First option is option number A. Plan A is to do chalitza. Plan B, then they can do yibum. But we prefer chalitza because people don't know how to do it l'shem shemayim. Now, however, Amar Rab does tell us, the way Rashi explains this, is that if both the man and the woman prefer to do yibum, ain't kaifin. We don't force him to do chalitza to say, oh no, you guys are not righteous. You're not intending for the mitzvah purpose, and then therefore you're like really encountering a prohibitory eishes ach. No, if they want to do yibum, they can do yibum. However, where he wants to do yibum, and she says, look, I'm not interested in my brother-in-law. And she says recognizable statements, where if we could go ahead and mislead the yavam and tell him, do chalitza tahar, we could potentially give you 200 zuz, which she's not going to give. We could mislead him. We could deliberately try to deceive him. But if not, we actually force him to do chalitza, because Rav Sheshes and Rav Dalet, how do we know if Yevamos falls in front of Mukashchin that we don't muzzle her? Which Rashi says Mukashchin is not necessarily Mukashchin. It's anytime she gives a good excuse for why she doesn't want to do yibum, we go ahead and we do chalitza. But we don't force them to do chalitza. If they want to do yibum, they're allowed to do yibum. And as the Gemara brings, Ki Asul Kamei Derab, when Yavam and Yavam will come in front of the Rav, Amalu, you tell them, look, if you want to do chalitza, fine. If you want to do yibum, fine. Meaning he first asked chalitza first, because that's option A. That's more ideal. But you could do. We don't force you to do chalitza. You could do yibum too. Because with the Daf, it depends on you. Like the Torah says, if the man doesn't want to, but it sounds like a mechavitz. If he wants to, if you want to chalitza, fine. If he wants to yibum, fine. Also, that's okay too. Which obviously, in today's times, many Ashkenaz is that we don't do any yibum. We don't do chalitza, which although in some Sephardic communities yibum is performed, but that's as you say, if you want to do, you could do. So the Yehuda also, we don't force them. How do we know this? Because the asking of Yehuda begin to the chalitza, because he instituted in his get of chalitza, he wrote like this in his document of chalitza. It said, "Eich pleinis bas pleini." How this woman, the daughter of that man, akrevasios pleini yevama kadman lebeidina. She brought to us her yavam in front of us to the court. And it was made known to us that he is the brother, the paternal brother of the one who died. And they said to him, if you want to do yibum, and if not, itla, then extend law to her your right foot, and he stuck out his right foot, and she removed his shoe from his foot. And she spit this spittle in front of him that was visible to the courts on the ground, because, as the Gemara tells us later on Daf Yomi base, it has to be spittle that's visible to the eyes of the judges. And so you see from his document that he was given a choice to do Yibum Chalitza, that although we say Mitzvah Chalitza Kedemes, it doesn't mean that that you have to do Chalitza. It just means we prefer it, but you could do Yibum also. And now, he just ended off that text of the get of the Chalitza a few more words. And we read in front of the Yavam, what it says in the Sefer of Teres Moshe, which the pasuk says over there, that I don't want to take her. Now the Gemara just explains when it says Ishtumaydeinu, that we would let him be known that he is the paternal brother of the one that passed away. So it's machlokes. One says be'edim. How do they know that he's the paternal brother? Specifically with witnesses that they have to bring. She has to bring two witnesses that he's the paternal brother from her late husband. One says no. For the Karav, even a relative, for the Ish, even a woman. But the halacha is yes, it's not testimony. You don't need two witnesses. It's just revealing a fact, and therefore for the Karav, even if it's a relative, even if it's a woman, would be sufficient. Now we said in the Mishnah B'chayris that we quoted before that Rabbi Shloimy originally, when they did it for a mitzvah purpose. So mitzvahs even could mitzvah chalitza. Obviously, that's what we prefer. We want to have even before the option of chalitza. But now that they don't have in mind for a mitzvah purpose, they said mitzvah chalitza could mitzvah yibum. They said mitzvah chalitza comes before the mitzvah yibum. Which he says they subsequently retracted and they said mitzvah yibum could mitzvah chalitza. No, mitzvah yibum is before mitzvah chalitza. So Amalei Nachman Yitzchak says Ach Shadari, a well-known phrase. What, the later generations are more righteous than the earlier generations? What, they got better? They became bigger tzaddikim? They do it l'shem mitzvah yibum? So says the Gemara, no. Mikara sav like Abishal. Originally they held like Abishal. Well, the B'sayv sav like Rabban. At the end they held like Rabban. The time like Lim the Bryce says Machlek is it's not because the people changed. It's because the opinions changed. And Abba Shalom, he says, if someone marries his Yevamah because she's beautiful, his sister-in-law, his brother's widow is beautiful, therefore he wants to marry her. All the Shum Ishas, which Chase explains, meaning that they just want to be called married. You know, he wants to be for the married club. No, he doesn't want to be a bachelor anymore. Or let's say for some other reasoning. That's Kilu Pagir Be'erva. It's as if he encountered Mamish and Erva of Eshazach. And says Abishal, it's close to my eyes. Lisa blood mamza, that the child should be considered mamza because it's not the mitzvah of yibum. You're not doing it for the mitzvah. You're mamish doing it shazach. The sages say no. Yavam Yabalad says no. Her yavam should come to her, which Makam Malcolm doesn't make it what the situation is, and therefore that they subsequently retracted and changed to the chachamim, and therefore it wasn't akshadala. It's just they held like chachamim that you could do it even l'shem noi, l'shem ishas, and l'shem davach. Now. The Gemara asks, related to this discussion, who's the Tana of the following brisa? The brisa says that Yevama Yava Yoleha. When it says in the Torah Yevama Yava Leha, so that is mitzvah. What does that mean? Shebetchila, because in the beginning, before his brother got engaged to this wife of his, Haysalah, this woman was to the Yavam B'chal. She was permitted. She was a single girl. She was like all single girls. Yes, so then she became forbidden when his brother got engaged to his wife. And then, when he died without any children, this woman again became permitted to him. Now, so therefore, Yochel, you would think that she would just go back to the original heter, which he must explain exactly what does that mean. That's supposed to come to teach. No, Yevam Yav is a mitzvah. Says the Gemara, Man Tana, who's the Tana of this brayse? Like Rashi adds on the words. And what does he say? So Amar B'Yitzchak Bar Abdimi, he says, this is Abba Sholhi that we just quoted before. This is what the brayse is saying. When it says in the pasuk Yevama Yav her Yavam should come on to her, that's mitzvah meaning. Because in the beginning that she was a regular single girl and it was permitted to the Yavam meaning. And as the Gemara explains now for Abba Shol, what does that mean? Originally, many men get married because a woman's beautiful. He wants to marry, he's allowed to marry her because she's beautiful. Many people marry because they don't want to be single anymore. You could. That was what it originally was with this woman. Oh, but then Esther she became forbidden. Now his brother married her. But then Chazam Hutsha she became permitted again when he does without any children. So Yochel Tachzal Terichin, you would think she goes back to the original heter, meaning that he can now marry her again. L'shem Noi, L'shem Ishus. Ooh, Tamalem Yevamos Daf. No, that's what it says. Has to be lemitzvah. Sounds like it has to be for the purposes of the mitzvah Yibum, because it says V'yibma. That's what the Brisa means. It's coming to tell us the halacha of Abishol. That's one pshat. Rav Ami says, no, you can even say it's like the Rabbanan, and don't say lemitzvah, but rather say mitzvah. Vachim, and this is what the Brisa was saying. When it says in the pasuk Yevama Yavi Aleha, that's telling you that mitzvah. Meaning, what do you mean it's a mitzvah? It's a mitzvah to do yibum more than chalitza. What does that mean? Because Shabbat originally has a b'chal heter. This woman was optionary, meaning rotza kainza, rotza ina kainza. She was permitted, regular single girl. He can marry her. He could choose not to marry her. Nesra, then she becomes forbidden when his brother married her, and then Chazavut, she becomes back permitted again when he does not need children. When we say in the Brisa Yochel Tachzal Terichin, you would think she would go back to the original heter, meaning, and not more than what originally was, that if he wants to, he doesn't marry her. Just like any single girl, he has the option of yes or no. We're Ratza Kainza, Ratza Ina Kainza. If he wants, he can marry. Wants, he not can marry her. So the Gemara just asks, wait a second, Ratza Ina Kainza, what does it mean if he wants, he can just not marry her? Hagidabe, but she's connected to him with Zika, Bechti Tibik. You think she could just go out with nothing? No, Elaim rather says the Gemara, what I mean to say is Ratza Kainza, if he wants, he can marry her. Ratza Chalitza, he can do Chalitza. Tamalayim Yavama Yavama comes to teach you that it's a mitzvah to do Yibum over that of chalitza, and it's not like how she originally was, which you have an equal choice of one or the other. No, here, so it's either mitzvah like Abishal, or it's even like Rabban, but it's a mitzvah to do to the contrary, like Rabban, not like Abishal, which actually the mitzvah is primarily to do yibum over that of chalitza, and it's not just a 50-50, it would be 70-30, whatever it is, to do yibum versus that of chalitza. Anytime.